Okay, we are streaming. David, are we good to go on public input?
We are live.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Robin Rains, and I would like to welcome you to the June 17th, 2021 Design Review Committee meeting. This is a 9-person committee whose primary function is to perform design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown, the riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning districts. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process, with one exception for hotels seeking to skip council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from the committee. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. You can also watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and enter code 9410. When we get to the public comment section, you may dial this same number and press *3. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute once again after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Chair, Jane Matthews. She's absent today. Karen Craig-Nolan. She's absent today. Jeremy Goldstein.
Quick hello.
Kimberly Hunter.
Hola.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Hello.
Brian Moffitt.
Hello.
Ben Williamson. He's absent today, and I am Robin Rains. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote. If there's a vote to be taken, additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hands to speak, and I will call upon them. We will begin with our administrative items and any unfinished business. 1 second. I do not have the agenda open. Wait 1 second. Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Okay. Thank you. And then let's do the roll call for that then. Kimberly Hunter.
Aye.
Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
And Robin Rains, aye. Okay, next we have on new business, formal design review. We're going to be reviewing 120 Biltmore. It's a level 2. It's a new building on the corner of Biltmore Avenue and South Market Street. New construction includes a 9-story, 69 to 96 foot tall mixed-use building with 3 levels of structured parking, 3,000 square feet of ground level retail, with an extended stay hotel and residential units above.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Shannon Tuck. I'll kind of get us kicked off here with the presentation on the first item. As Chair Rains has indicated, it's the formal review for the project located at 120 Biltmore Avenue. I will go ahead and share my screen so I can kind of talk through some of the materials. And please let me know when you see that screen.
We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So the project is located at 120 Biltmore Avenue, which is the corner of Biltmore Avenue and South Market on the sort of south end of the city's CBD or Central Business District. For context, for those of you who might not be familiar with the site, just catty corner to the northwest would be the Orange Peel. This is also on the same side of the street as the French Broad Food Co-op as another example. It is further down the street. I think directly across the street on South Market is, I believe, just an empty parking lot. It might also be important for folks to know, if you're not familiar with the site, that the site drops somewhat precipitously in elevation from Biltmore Avenue across the back of the property, or across the property to the east. If you've been on South Market Street, and you know, if you make that right hand turn off of Biltmore Avenue, you drop dramatically in elevation as you go down South Market. The same is true for this property. So while the project is classified as a 9-story building, only 6 of those stories are visible from either Biltmore Avenue or South Market. From the back of the property, you will see all 9 stories, but 3 of those are structured parking that are tucked under the building. So this project also was on the committee's agenda last month for formal review, but we ended up not having enough time. We lost some commissioners and weren't able to complete the formal review. However, a number of the committee members stayed on to kind of offer an informal review. So that's another function of this body, is to offer informal design review. So the applicant did revise some of their materials. Those are included in your meeting packet. You may have noticed there's 2 sets of renderings, one that's just labeled rendering, which was last month's renderings, and then a revised set of renderings that were included after that informal review. So going to those newest renderings, this is the elevation on South Market Street, looking at the north face of the building. So you can see the primary entrance into the residences here at the ground level. And then the non-residential space sort of continues down South Market and then actually wraps the corner as you turn. Well, there's another rendering of the South Market side, and then turns the corner. Well, that's, yes, well, that's actually sorry, I'm trying to get to well, here, this is a good elevation to look. So the primary entrance into the residences, the restaurant corner here at the, right at the corner of South Market and Biltmore Avenue. And then you can see the project, the non-residential space continues down Biltmore Avenue to the retail space that is tucked here at the end. So as far as design and operational standards and compliance with the UDO, this project appears to meet all of the requirements, including those for fenestration, step backs, setbacks, design organization or building organization. So it becomes more a question, I think, of just compliance with the downtown design guidelines. This project is proposed to be primarily an extended stay hotel. There are 43 units proposed in the 6 stories. 40 of those units will be extended stay hotel units, while the other 3 remaining units will be residential condos. We have approximately, I believe it was 5,000 square feet of non-residential space on that ground level. So scrolling back up, let me go back to the beginning. Apologize. So this was the rendering that we started with. You can see one of the revisions that the applicant made after the informal discussion last month was, I think, some changes perhaps to the balconies. That was part of the discussion last month, was that there's still some concern that the balconies sort of appear kind of applied on. And I'm not sure if there's a change of material actually proposed, or if it's just some work with the rendering to kind of demonstrate that it's not quite as transparent looking as I think it did in the last set of renderings, and that it sort of has less of an applied on appearance as a result of these revisions. You can see here Again, the sort of changes in the rendering, a better view of the main entrance that was discussed some in informal review as well, trying to kind of make those entrances read a little bit stronger. And then I think the other entrance concern had to do with the entrance into the retail space, that also just kind of disappeared in the recessed area underneath the second level. And you can see here the applicant has provided a sort of a more close-up rendering of that space to kind of demonstrate what the entrance into the space would look like. Again, here we are at that corner view, which is the prominent view into the property, and then the rear view. So here you see the 3 stories that are tucked underneath for the structured parking. It's also visible from the site plan, but there are 2 entrances into the parking level, one that comes off of South Market into that upper level, and that one comes off of the alley that runs along the back of the property. And we just call it South Market Extension. I'm not sure if that's its official name or not, but this is from an alley, and that enters into the other 2 levels. Sort of a bird's eye or axonometric view into the property, sort of seeing that some of that private residential space with a green roof or some courtyard space for the residents. There's also some upper story rooftop amenity areas also provided, and of course the balconies that we've discussed before. And a more close-up view into that courtyard space. I'm going to kind of gloss through these architectural plans. The applicant may want to discuss these more, and then of course we did discuss some last month as well, just sort of the basic black and white line drawings, the sort of the flat elevations from all sides of the project. Of course, that's the rear of the project, again, having that additional height coming from those 3 levels of structured parking. This is the south elevation that would be adjacent to the property to the south, not necessarily visible from the public way. The elevation from Biltmore Avenue, which we would consider this the primary elevation. Biltmore Avenue is a key pedestrian street, whereas South Market is not. Although it is city maintained, it is not a key pedestrian street. And then the applicant has provided these Photoshop renderings that put the building into the street, so you can really get a sense of the context of the building. One of the only design standards that staff kind of flagged for consideration had to do with the massing and scale context with what is surrounding. So you can kind of see here some of the transition from these 2.5 story structures to what would be a 6-story structure. Excuse me. And just kind of flagged for the committee's reference to see if that is something that they feel is worth discussing. Excuse me. Similarly, from the north side of the proposed project, you can see the scale and height of some of the surrounding buildings. And then from the south side, looking up Biltmore Avenue to the north, another perspective view. So the materials, just to remind the members of the committee, it's a combination of fiber cement panels with EIFS. This kind of handy color-coded guide kind of helps illustrate that along the primary faces of Market Street and Biltmore Avenue, they are proposing 2 different colors of fiber cement panels. Of course, there's quite a bit of glazing at the ground level with anodized aluminum window frames, and then EIFS on sort of the secondary faces, the less visible adjacent to other properties, or that rear only visible really from the alley is the EIFS. and then the perforated metal for the balconies. At the base is the polished concrete block that once kind of is polished and finished, has a little bit more of a masonry appearance. And I believe that concludes what I was going to cover, but I'd be happy to go back or open up any of the other materials for the committee's reference. I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Shannon, the only street trees that are required are the ones that are shown on Market?
No, there are street trees required on Biltmore Avenue as well, as you can see from the plan.
Thank you.
I think the applicant just ghosted them in just so you could see the details of the building a little bit better on the renderings.
I got them now. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for me? Otherwise, I know the applicant's design team is here today and they may have more information they'd like to share.
I think my question is more about materials. Because of the side of the street it's on before you get to exactly where the hotels are, it's much more historic leading up to that side of Biltmore. And I recognize that it's Biltmore and Market. Were there any like more modern, glass, much more glass and much more white, so that it feels a little bit more like a transition leading into some of the newer pieces moving up Biltmore? Did you discuss that? Or is this pretty much the best we get with materials?
I don't believe, materials I think weren't really discussed in any great detail. I think there was some concern expressed about the use of EFIS just generally, which seems to come up with any project that includes EFIS. I don't recall in any of the informal reviews there being much more to it than that, other than noting that the fenestration requirements and the glazing requirements at the ground level were satisfied, and the upper levels too, for that matter.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Shannon. This is Stephen Lee Johnson. Has this already gone before TRC?
It has, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I just had a couple of other comments, but they may be better stated after we hear from the developer and architect. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Shannon? If not, is the project team on?
Hey, this is Warren Sugg with Civil Design. I know Peter is on here as well. Peter may be able to weigh into any of those questions that we had. I know he had some dialogue back and forth, but available for any questions you have.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Peter Alvarez with MHA Works, and I have Eric Howell with me here, who is the project manager for the 120 Biltmore project. And this project has gone through multiple reviews with this committee under the prior organization. And it seems now, after the last meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, that we've worked through a lot of the concerns that have been brought up. And I think we've hopefully satisfied those concerns. But I would like to mention one question that did come up about the scale going down the street. And Shannon, if you would go to the west elevation, the drawing, it's the flat black and white line drawing. Yes, that right there. And then if you look again at how we organize the building, it's almost a square in plan. And we used a 9 square grid as the organizer of the essentially the main partie of the building, and use that strategy for the step backs that are required on both Biltmore Avenue and South Market because they're key streets. So we're stepping back 2/3 of the facades on those respective streets in the required 10 feet. And we've also lowered the southwest corner, which in this view right here is the left side of the drawing. So what we have is 3 or 4 points where the building is stepping down from its very highest point down as the building moves visually to the south towards the historic buildings that are adjacent or adjoining. Now, keep in mind that there's a relatively large parking lot between our project and the 3 or 4 small stone buildings, and that parking lot is used for parking for those buildings. So it's not likely that there will ever be a transition building within that parking lot space. But we recognized early on that we need to step this building down to at least try to bring the scale down to something related to those 3 buildings. And we feel that we've accomplished that.
Is it okay if I ask a couple of questions?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. So I wanted to ask you more about materials. For me, just visually, I think the project is really respectful. And when you look at it in conjunction with the historic buildings that are there and also the new buildings that come in, it's at a key transition point in terms of where it sits. And so has there been consideration for actually even more lighter, more modern, more glass materials so that that transition is softer? It seems to enhance historic nor blend historic. So I find that maybe the materials could be a little bit actually more modern. Have you explored that?
We have obviously looked at a lot of different material options, Kim, and I think we feel like we have something that's fairly modern. We're trying to not make it all glass or all light beige or gray, and try to introduce colors that are more sand or stone color to try to blend with everything that's in the foreground, but at the same time have the scale and the glass sizes that are more contemporary. So we're trying to, the fact that it's on a corner, that it requires multiple step backs, and that it requires activated street level activity on 2 sides of the building and needs to step down. I think we've juggled a lot of things here to try to achieve all of them or some of them. And
certainly,
we have to remember the purpose of the building as well, and it is, a multifamily building. So we're thinking about those spaces inside, how much glass we can actually use in order to design that space effectively. And we are definitely over the fenestration requirements, of course, for those upper levels, keeping in mind that we have some limitations of how much glass we can use.
Sure, and the reason why, again, I think your design is very respectful and has taken all those things into consideration. It's just on a key corner where there's, it's, this, but probably better than I, there's so much of the historic piece there and also transitioning into new that it's just like a pivotal corner. So thank you for answering my question. My other question is about stormwater. Can you go a little bit more into how you're mitigating for, especially because of the grade?
We think that's going to be a good question for Warren.
Yeah, Warren.
Yeah, sure. We certainly recognize that we're changing impervious here. We've got stormwater considerations. Thoughts so far.
Can you speak up, Warren? I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay now, Jeremy? Yeah, so we certainly recognize those stormwater requirements here. We're increasing the impervious. we're expecting this would be a StormTech system integrated into some of those drive connections and building areas. And then there will be and has been some coordination with Nancy and Rick on the connection of that to the public stormwater systems that are in and around this area. There certainly will have to be some upgrades and some thoughts there, but on-site stormwater controls is our intention.
Hey, Warren, just for the non-technical folks on the commission, can you describe what a StormTech system is real quick?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it is a vault system that has the ability to not only capture the stormwater, contain it, but also to draw it down over a longer period of time. It has a gravel base to it with a fabric. So think of it as a really good filter. The water comes in, it has holding capacity, and then slowly infiltrates through that gravel back into groundwater. When you have those bigger stormwater events, it also has the ability to bypass that infiltration and go directly into the pipe system.
Right. So it's an entirely underground system.
That's a much more straightforward way of saying it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Kim, just so you know, Warren referred to working with Nancy and Rick. They're our stormwater plans reviewers in the Development Services Department that look at all of the private system connections to the city's public infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure.
Can I have a
Jeremy
question?
has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. That Kim asked, but my larger question to really Sasha or whomever, maybe you, Robin, but is stormwater a design issue that we should be discussing, or is that a TRC issue that it's not something you see? They have to meet the technical requirements. Should we even be discussing it? And really, I do appreciate the question, and I care about the stormwater, but I'm more thinking of a process of when we have a full agendas and we want to get through things. Is this something we should spend our time on? So that's my question.
I'll jump in real quick. It can be, especially if they either haven't thought about it or they've got some it's going to impact the design in some way, not just the visual design, but how it interfaces with the other systems in the community. So it can be, but I think that they answered it adequately.
Does anybody else have any questions for the project team?
I have a thought too. One thing that does relate to that, Jeremy and Brian, in terms of stormwater is like green roofs. And so Warren, it looks like on the rendering, there's a pretty significant green roof shown on this. Is that like an intensive system or an extensive system?
Stephen Lee, I'll let Peter go into a little more detail on that roof system, but you're right. We do have some space up there. There's a great visual of it.
There you go.
As well as up there. So, Peter, do you want to weigh in on that a little bit?
Yes, we're working with the consultant firm that did our project at the garage apartments and 145 Biltmore. So
Live Roof.
Yeah,
is the name.
Live Roof, Julio, Live Roof. Emilio. And we have them as a consultant on the project. They're going to be looking at, once we get into the construction drawings and start thinking about how the roof loads will work, they're going to advise us on what the type of system we would use. But I think the idea is to have as much vegetation and as much stormwater holding capacity as possible. So.
Peter, what caps, or Eric, Peter or Eric, what caps the wall? What's on the parapet cap?
It'd be some type of a metal standard parapet cap.
Will it have a color?
Pardon me?
Will it have a color?
It's probably going to be If you notice the horizontal elements between the floors, it's sort of a bronze color, it'll probably be that same color.
I like your balconies a lot better this time, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The little roof that's holding up the your solar panels still just doesn't match the rest of the architecture. It just kind of looks tacked on. Minor gripe, still like the building. I think it's come a long way from when we first started looking at it. That's really my only comment.
Okay. Brian, I think we can obviously need to take another look at that. And
Have you thought about using the language of the balconies themselves?
as the structure for the, yes, we could do that. We could, there's
I
several.
don't know, it might be too heavy. I don't know.
Well, we could put the panels, we could relocate them to be on the roof of the element adjoining them and have the other space not have that structure. I think what the owner would like to have is to have some type of covered balcony at that deck. And that singular column, it is sort of an odd element there. You know, it needs to be something different, but I don't know.
Yeah, I get it.
It's just, it's not resolved yet. It just,
What if the column spacing related to the windows below or something to draw that? I don't know if that would be.
yeah, that could be. We could add. Shannon, can you go to that west elevation again, the line drawing, and we can maybe work through this other direction.
Robin, could I ask a question here?
Yeah, Sasha has a question.
So
Sorry.
I just related to this. I didn't know if for Brian, is it the weight also of that roof line going across is why it looks so light and kind of tacked on?
One more.
Like the thickness of the.
I think so, Sasha. I think I'm reacting to when I look at it. It's, you know, so he's got such a really fun organization where he's got a clear base with a clear masonry and glass base, and then he's got this wonderful dividing line saying, okay, from here on up, you know, I'm a different thing, and I wouldn't bring either of those languages in. And then he's got the ins and the outs and the recesses accented by the balconies with that language, and he's got a really clear horizontal line kind of illustrating the cap at the top. But then that one little piece just kind of looks like it's either it's not thick enough, and it's not it doesn't look like it was done with the same care as the rest of the design. So, you know, basically, Peter, just either do a really bad job on the rest of the building or make this piece match what you've done.
Well, what if we let's just maybe moving the column so that it aligns with a solid portion below and thicken the edge of the roof so that it matches the roof on the adjoining element that is just behind it, and then it'll become more integrated.
We might even be able to work with the weight, you know, or the size and width of the columns too.
Agreed.
You know, maybe they're thicker.
Yeah, maybe they're the same size as the columns down at the street level, so that we sort of show that coming through
Have
the
some
building.
sort of relationship as well.
Okay.
I think we'd rather fix that than make the building look bad. To answer your concern.
And I put a link in the chat. I think it's the Nichiha Novenary or something, and it's a pretty modern looking material from the ones I've seen in the wild. They have different colors that they use.
Kim just asked a question on chat. Do you want to ask the question out loud, Kim, or do you want me to read it?
I can do that. I was
Okay.
asking, how is stormwater impacted by extended balconies on a steep grade? Because it doesn't have the benefit of I'm sorry, my words are very slow today. I can't think of the word, but it doesn't have the benefit of the, somebody help me.
Infiltration.
Yes, thank you.
Drainage?
Again, Peter.
Are you asking
Yeah.
if properties are gonna have drainage?
Yeah, drainage, and with that grade, the stormwater piece is critical just because there's, I want to just figure out how it's impacting the design and if there's anything to talk about related to the design around that. And with the extended balconies, although functional and beautiful, there's a potential additional drainage matter. So I just want to see how that was captured in the design.
Well, what we're intending to do, oh, go ahead,
Peter.
Warren.
I was gonna say, all impervious areas have to be captured within, or accounted for in that stormwater controls. So it's not as if those are left out of the calculation. And Peter, I don't know if you wanted to speak to the specifics, but we definitely have to know that they're there.
Yeah, we obviously don't want to have the water from the balconies dripping down onto the sidewalk. That's why we're intending to have some type of a drainage system to drain these balconies. But we're not in the detailing yet to know exactly what that's going to look like.
Well, if we're done with the discussion, I would like to move that that we approve this project and allow it to go to its next phase of review.
Was that a motion?
I thought it was, but I can.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll do a roll call vote. Kimberly Hunter,
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Moffitt,
Aye.
Jeremy Goldstein,
Aye.
and I will aye. So that is approved, and we can move to the next item on the agenda, which is a conditional zoning for 22 Woodfin Street.
Robin, real quick question. I know we just voted, but there is no requirement for public input before we do that?
I don't know. Sasha, Shannon.
Oh, I would say, I mean, this is something that is still open for discussion by the commissioners. There's two ways of handling it. You can take public comment after each item, or you can wait and take public comment at the end. I think if you want to be as conservative and open and accessible as possible, I would recommend taking public comment after each item.
Before we vote?
Yeah, typically you take it before you vote. But we can always reopen the public hearing and take any public comment if the commission would like to do that. We may want to check with Dave Hazard first to see if there's any callers in the queue waiting to speak.
Well, and my question too is, are we required to? And we may choose to, but I just didn't know if it was a requirement as part of this process.
We will take public comment as part of this process.
Yeah, Chair, Vice Chair, there is no one in the queue wishing to speak on this item.
Okay.
So probably not necessary to open for public comment. But this next project, there could be people. So we may want to, I think that was a very helpful reminder that
Yes.
we want to just pause and check
Thank
to
you.
see if anybody wants to speak. Yeah.
Yes, I'm new at this. So thank you, Jeremy. So the conditional zoning at 22 Woodfin Street is a new building addition on Woodfin Street. It's new construction of a 7 to 11 story, 117 foot tall building addition totaling approximately 477,500 square feet with 8,000 square feet of ground level retail, structured surface and on-street parking with extended stay hotel and residential units above. Also included are landscape and sidewalk improvements.
Robin,
Yes, Jeremy.
and fellow committee members, before we hear this one, I received a notice. I own I own property within the area, the notice area, or an ownership interest in property. I wanted to first disclose that. I have zero financial interest in this project. I don't believe there's any conflict. I spoke with the assistant city attorney. She agreed that I can be fair and impartial, but I did want to disclose that I'm an adjacent property owner. And if you all felt that that somehow disqualified me, you need to know that before we heard this.
As a committee, Sasha, how would we, you have a question also, so maybe you can ask your question and then, no, you don't have a question.
Sorry, I just forgot to take my hand.
Okay, all right.
Shannon can.
If this
Yeah.
was quasi-judicial, we would normally have to vote whether or not to allow him to continue. This isn't quasi-judicial, so we don't have to, but it's probably not a bad idea to just have a quick roll call vote.
And please know that since I'm here, it wouldn't break the quorum. But I mean, I've dealt with this when I was on P&Z, and yeah, I don't feel like it's a conflict, but I do want to give you guys the options to weigh in on that. So,
Okay.
I would agree with Brian that it would just be a good idea just to kind of feel the temperature of the committee members. And if anybody had any concern, you could discuss it and vote.
Okay. I'll call names and the commissioners can tell me whether they're okay with Jeremy weighing in on this or whether he should recuse himself. I'll start with Kimberly Hunter.
I'm fine with him being included.
Okay. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Yeah, I'd appreciate Jeremy's comments on this.
Brian Moffitt.
Yes, he could stay.
And I too would like his comments on this. So.
all right, I'm staying.
Awesome.
All right. Would you like me to go ahead and introduce this case?
Yes, please.
Okay, so as Chair Rains has indicated, this is the conditional zoning project for the property located at 22 Woodfin Street. The property today supports the Four Points Sheraton Hotel and its ancillary facilities. And the proposal is to add a very significant building addition that will wrap around the existing hotel and incorporate into the existing hotel. So it is definitely an addition, even though it is a very substantial addition. Also included in this project are improvements to the surface parking. It is more or less located in the same location that it exists today, but it would be redone and restriped and kind of relaid out, as well as some improvements to the streetscape and a kind of mini road diet, if you want to call it that, along Woodfin Street, where one of the two, it would be westbound lanes, is taken out, and some on-street parking is provided, and as well as some planting area for trees and a wide kind of comfortable sidewalk to kind of help support those, to activate that corner and support those businesses that might be located on the lower level. There's also some existing on-street parking and the addition of a couple additional spaces, I believe, on Central Avenue. This is a very large combined plan set, so I apologize. I'm going to kind of scroll through some of the drawings. This project's been to informal review on several occasions, so I know many of you have kind of reviewed a lot of these drawings already. But I think rather than go through the flat black and white line drawings, I think it might be more helpful to concentrate on the renderings. So I'm going to go to those and try to kind of walk you through that as well. So here you can see this addition that kind of wraps around the existing hotel. You can see this is the end. This is the side that is adjacent to the Interstate 240 ramp. So this would be the west face of the project. I-240 would be back here. And this is the, oh wait, did I say that right? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. No, that is the north elevation. I apologize. So that is from the interstate looking back at the project. Here's the west elevation here from the ramp or from the parking lot looking at the project. Woodfin Street is over here on the right-hand side. And then here, this is what we would refer to as the primary facade. Woodfin Street is a key pedestrian street. So this would be sort of the principal facade and where a lot of those streetscape improvements are occurring. I pointed out on the site plan the little road diet with the on-street parking. Here it is represented in the rendering. You can see we have nice sidewalks, a planting strip for the trees, and a outdoor dining or gathering area that would be associated with the non-residential space at the ground level. And then the east or the Central Avenue side, so that's turning the corner around Biltmore Avenue onto Central Avenue. This is a little bit more challenging side because it does require dealing with the face of the existing hotel, which is screened here with some additional units. That was one of the comments that came out of informal review and the review with the Downtown Commission was that previously in previous renderings, that was a blank wall. And that's the existing wall of the hotel. So the applicant has responded by adding another little bit of addition around the back end of that building in order to provide some more traditional fenestration for that end of the building. And those are just some additional hotel rooms. So this is a mixed-use project. We have the non-residential space at the ground level, which includes the small grocer, the small earth fair located at would be the west side of Biltmore or Woodfin Street. And then you have this other flex space. It's retail, restaurant, whatever, ends up being supportable in this area. But also included in the project or the upper stories are predominantly, residential, either extended stay hotel units or apartment or condominium units. So it is a mixed project. Also included in the project is some structured parking with an entrance from Woodfin Street. There is also a driveway cut on the west end of Woodfin Street of the project. There is a driveway cut there existing today for that surface parking, and another entrance to the surface parking on Central Avenue, approximately in the same location exists today. So the only new driveway cut is here, right in the middle on Woodfin Street, and that is to enter the parking garage. I'm going to pause a little bit more on the east elevation. So this project has gone through technical review, and we identified 4 areas where the project does not comply with the UDO's design and operational standards. However, I wouldn't say that they're all created equally. I would say 2 of the 4 are relatively minor. For example, there is the project exceeds the setback requirements on the Central Avenue side, but again, it's because of the accommodating the existing hotel largely. That's what drives that. And it's not a significant deviation. It's just a few feet. Similarly, we require that you not have a blank face extend more than 20 feet. And this wall face is, I believe, 24 feet. So, again, just barely exceeds what we would normally allow. What is probably more significant is that the UDO requires that you not have blank faces at the ground level. We try to activate this space, make it interesting and accessible for pedestrians. And when the elevation, as the sidewalk drops, and when the elevation, that foundation elevation exceeds 6 feet, you're supposed to reset the ground floor at that point and then start adding fenestration and occupiable space. And that doesn't happen. So we start here at about 4 feet at the southern end, and then it drops. As it drops in elevation, you end up with a height. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 feet here. And then again, you have this little courtyard, terrace space. And then again, that's, I forget how tall that is, more than 4 feet. And then again, it drops to another, 12 or plus feet here. So normally that would not be permitted. However, because this is a conditional zoning, this can be modified through that process. It's just an exception that might be acceptable and could be granted by the city council if they were to support that. I think that's an important point for this design review committee to consider, and whether or not, one suggestion that came out of the downtown commission review is whether or not there's some sort of something that can be done to make this foundation a little bit more interesting and interactive with people who might be walking by. So whether that's public art, a mural, some special materials used, just something was one suggestion that was offered. The other compliance piece that the project does not comply with is exceeding the maximum horizontal width of a building that is over 75 feet in height. So this is depending on where you measure it, a 7 to 11 building addition. So we do have some portions of this building that are over 75 feet tall. And then we have faces, actually all 4 faces exceed the maximum 145 feet. 2 of the faces don't exceed it by a dramatic amount. It might be 160 feet or 170 feet. But we do have 2 faces that exceed it, with lengths over 300 feet. So that, I think, I believe that standard exists in order to try to kind of control, big hulking mass. So as buildings get taller, so you don't kind of shade out all of the neighbors to any great extent. So that is so I would say those are the 2 design and operational standards that the project doesn't comply with that deserve or merit some consideration. A couple other things to point out about the project. You can see from the step backs that are provided, the relief that is provided, the change in materials, that the applicant is breaking up that mass to some degree by doing all of these different things, by using different materials, by having different planes, and by stepping sections of the building apart. So the effort is to try to make it, even though it is one building, is to make it look and feel and read like multiple buildings. So I think it is a matter for this committee's consideration whether or not they feel that this design successfully does that in a way that can, that addresses perhaps some of those design and operational standards that are not being satisfied. The materials proposed include the same kind of glazing and anodized aluminum frames that we saw with the last application. And then this is a combination of light and red brick that is being proposed, to kind of help. You can see from this perspective that, they do kind of break up the segments of the buildings, kind of make it look and read like different building pieces. And then there's this light bronzed anodized metal panels at the penthouse and restaurant levels. So this is the uppermost levels. You'll see a change in material where the structure steps back. Again, we have the perforated metal balconies that we saw with the last application and the polished stone base around the perimeter. It does look like there's a small amount of ephes, although I'm not entirely sure where this occurs, and perhaps the applicant can point that out. I think those cover the main points that I had hoped to address. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if there aren't any questions for me, I'll turn it over to the applicant to explain the project further.
Shannon, that last point on the exceeds the maximum horizontal width, that's the maximum horizontal wall dimension in any direction is limited to 145 feet for additional floors above the 75 feet.
That's correct.
Is that the standard?
Yes,
Okay.
that is the standard. And it is, let's see, it's most notable on the east and west facades. So that is the facade facing the I-240 ramp and then the facade facing Central Avenue. And that could be due in part because of how we measure height. So the building is going to look and feel, or actually, no, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. I apologize. So let me go to those elevations, I think, rather than the renderings. I think that might be a little bit easier to see. So we were saying it was on the east and west facade. So you can see here 75 feet occurs approximately at this 80 level where my cursor is. So it's the mass of the building that's above that 80 level. So if you see here, you kind of measure, if you measure straight across, that is in the neighborhood of 300 feet. Now that is a little different than if you look at a different elevation, for instance, the south elevation. Here's the 80 level. So you can see because of the step back, the mass of the building that's above the 75 feet is not, the horizontal dimension is not as wide. So this still does exceed the 145 feet, but not to the same degree as you see on the east and west facades. So there's the west elevation. And again, here's your 80 level. So it's this portion of the building above this line.
Does anybody have any questions for Shannon? I don't see any questions for Shannon.
I do.
Okay.
So thank you, Robin. Where we're looking at the change in grade that's above 6 feet. I didn't see a lighting plan. How does the lighting get changed if it's retail versus what it currently is? Is it expanded? Is it more for human and pedestrian traffic? Is it different? The reason why I ask is because that's a detail I think I thought originally I didn't care. And then I thought, oh, how that impacts dark bodies is a big deal. So maybe it is a big deal that becomes activated.
Well, given that this is the downtown, we do have a street lighting that occurs at a higher intensity than you might see like in a residential neighborhood. So you do have street lighting, existing street lighting on Central Avenue, which is this is the facade that you're referring to, as well as on Woodfin. So you would have street lighting. Beyond that, you would likely, and I'd invite the applicant to speak to that further, but you would likely just get the ambient lighting that comes out of the ground level retail space here, and perhaps a tiny bit that may come out of any of these units. And then oftentimes projects like this will include some what we call wall packs. So these are lights that are attached directly to a wall that helps shine light down on the walking surface. So I don't know, that's often a detail that comes later in the design development of the actual building drawings. So I don't know if the applicant has put some thought into that, but I'll let them respond to that further.
Thank you.
I think I do have a question. I'm still working my way through making sure I understand and applying this maximum horizontal wall dimension, Shannon. The applicant would probably say that those aren't the same walls because he's broken them in plane, right? Do we have a definition in the UDO for, or a diagram? I've been looking at the CBD in the ordinance and I haven't seen. Do you know what I'm asking? Am I making any sense?
We don't have, I don't believe we have a definition. I have to go back and double check, but it doesn't register in my brain that we have a definition for horizontal plane or wall or anything like that. I'm not sure, the applicant, that may be part of the applicant's strategy to sort of break up the the maximum horizontal wall length. But I'm not sure if that's really what the standard is getting at. I think the standard is trying to ensure that as a building gets tall, over 75 feet, that the mass is not, that it starts to kind of break up. And one way to maybe do that with a single addition is to actually just sort of interrupt them and bring them back down to ground plane and then have a gap, so you have a space between. But even though this is sort of stepped back at different planes, I think, that standard is still technically exceeded. So, but again, I think your point is well taken, that there could be a design strategy to help mitigate that by offering these different.
Hey, Shannon.
Yeah.
Does the UDO specify what that gap would be?
No, it just says maximum horizontal wall length. And I'll pull up that standard here real quick.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, we got into this with a different standard. Remember, for the River Arts District, where it said, it was a maximum 200 feet, and then you had to have a break in the building. And we went round and round on if a glass wall met that requirement or not. And kind of, at least I still come down on that it's meant to be, because it says from front to back in the river design guidelines. Now this one, it just says flat out maximum horizontal wall dimension in any direction limited to 145 feet, but it doesn't tell me, okay, what do you mean by wall and what's the intent? I can go to the diagrams where it's talking about street wall, limiting the size of a tower above 75 feet. And it does seem to not really care whether it's stepped or different materials. So I apologize that we're taking a fairly complex time to go through standards, but that's part of what we have to do here.
Sasha?
I guess the one thing I could add to this conversation is that when we were reviewing this project in an informal way earlier this winter, I sent both the applicant and our design review subcommittee at the time, which was only Robin, Stephen Lee, and Brian, some images from the downtown master plan appendices. And I'm happy to put that link in the chat. But it does talk about some of these standards, and it was an appendices. So it's not an officially adopted guiding document, but it does speak to the intent of these standards, because that's what guided our UDO changes in 2010. And it seems fairly clear from the drawings that there are, jigs and jags in these buildings, and there's some change of surface kind of plane, but they still count. The building length still counts, if that makes sense.
Here we go. I finally found it. Let me pull this over. So these are standards that apply to buildings taller than 75 feet for additional floors extending above this point. And then you've got floor plate limited, maximum dimension defined. The maximum horizontal wall dimension in any direction is limited to 145 feet for additional floors above 75 feet. And I can go to, let me return to the chat, and I can pull up Sasha's appendices that she shared. Oh, nope, sorry, wrong chat link.
I just shared it now, sorry.
Okay.
It's on page 67. It's a pretty long document, but.
Oh, Sasha, I keep getting the agenda. Oh, it's at the bottom, sorry.
Yeah, I looked back at our email chain, and at the time I was wanting to see some kind of narrative or an explanation from the applicant on how they're meeting, how they believe they're meeting this requirement. And I also like to note, it might be early in the process, but we did receive a public comment on this project, a voicemail and an email. And the main issues there's four main issues. He says it's out of scale for the neighborhood. The height is out of scale. He has an issue with converting the lane on Woodford Street, and he talks about how it's the project is contributing in terms of community amenities. So I would like to note that we do have public comment regarding the scale and the height of this, which goes to this very issue. And how the applicant's meeting. And I know we're going to get this from the applicant. Thank you for providing that diagram. That's exactly the one I was looking for. I remember I had seen it and I just couldn't remember where.
And Shannon, if you scroll down one more, I think it's even more illustrative. So, and you see in the appendices, it says 150-foot maximum length for floors above 75. And that was the consultant's recommendation. We changed it to 145. That is the length of the Flatiron building. So if you think of the Flatiron, that's 145 feet.
Yeah,
Peter has raised a hand.
Yes, I remember the discussion about the master plan and the 145 feet. It may seem like a technicality, but it does speak to our overall design strategy and the logic of breaking up the building, because the length of a wall is different than the length of a building. And I think that I want to be clear about that, because we took the definition literally in the guidelines of a wall not being longer than 145 feet. Now, of course, the building is longer than 145 feet, but we've broken the mass of the building up into smaller segments in as our strategy to meet the 145-foot requirement. We've done that through multiple step backs, material changes, and height changes, and we feel that meets the intent of the guidelines that were passed back in 2009, 2010. And again, it talked a wall, and the discussion was around the wall of the length of the Flatiron building. And the Flatiron building has a flat wall. So it's the length of it as a building and the length of it as a wall are the same length. And we all agree on that. But what we're trying to do is show this as multiple buildings with the scale broken up in such a way, using changes in massing, changes in step backs, changes in materials to meet that guideline. So that's been our strategy for the last, since we started getting into the details of this late last year.
Peter, was there anything else about the presentation or any of the details that I covered that you'd like to elaborate further on?
No, but I'm available for any other questions about the project.
Shannon, can you show us the renderings again, looking down? Something similar to what we're looking at now. Do we have?
We also sent renderings of different views and some long range elevations as well.
Yeah, I have those. I apologize. I didn't get through all of the materials. So let me, as I mentioned, it's one big PDF. So let me.
Yeah, the long range ones may be helpful in comparing them to those pictures you just showed us, I think.
Yeah. There we go. So again, Peter has offered these sort of photoshopped images that takes the project and puts them in the context of the street. So here, this is on Woodfin Street, looking east towards the 60 North Market and other projects. And then here, this is on the low end of Central Avenue, looking south, and an axonometric bird's eye view of the project from the interstate, kind of looking into the project site. You see the surface parking there, and then it wraps around the corner of the building. And then I forgot to mention that this project, because of the height, requires that they also provide these contexts, so you can kind of these view shed views from predetermined locations in the city. So the first is Merriman and Graceland Street. So you can see what the impact on the skyline might be. So you see from this image, it's very small in the horizon. And then from Town Mountain Road crossing over I-240, this is the view that is most visible. This is of the pre-established points in the city. This is the one where you will see the project the most, where it has the most mass that kind of pops up. The other views are completely invisible, not visible because of either landforms or existing buildings. So College Street at the west side of the tunnel. And then Biltmore Avenue and Short Cox Avenue, also not visible. And then I-240 at the Smoky Park Bridge, also not visible. Oh, and I thought there was, one more where it's just, you get a tiny little glimpse, which is from the Stevens Lee Recreation Center. And thank you for reminding me to go through those. I apologize.
Do you mind scrolling back to you had one that sort of, that one.
Yeah.
Down one, yeah.
Oh, down one or up one?
No, I want to look at it from the top down. Yeah, that, thank you.
I mean, other than a parking garage and the Harrah's, I about called it by the wrong name, a couple other buildings like that, it's going to be the longest building in downtown, right?
And the largest.
I guess the question for us is, what do we consider the 145 to be measuring? The building or a wall? I mean,
so if this was a single block and you had a 90-foot building that was 100 feet long on one parcel, and somebody built a building right beside it, 0 lot line, on the next parcel, and it was 90 feet tall, we would have a block of building that was more than that, but no single project, assuming they're not the same developer within 5 years. So we have blocks of urban context, at least downtown. I don't know that we have many over 75 feet. I can't think of any that are more than 145 feet long. Do we, Shannon?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, that is a good question. That would be a good thing to kind of investigate. I'd like to ask Sasha something. So I'm relatively new to the discussion or to design review and kind of learning some things as I go. I know Sasha's been a lot more involved in these conversations over the past, as have a couple other staff who aren't with us any longer. But my understanding was that that maximum wall length was in part to force the buildings to kind of step back a little bit and create some air and light, between buildings. Sasha, am I mixing that up with another standard, or is that correct?
And I did step away for a few minutes, but I think I heard your question. I think that's true. Yes. I mean, I think it's just having, similar to our discussion of 159 Riverside, like having massive, how big of a mass do you want? And then 75 feet was kind of the point of thinking, well, up to 75 feet, we're not going to restrict this. But over 75 feet, we are. Like it's.
Right. And so, when you have one building next to another building, oftentimes there's a break between those buildings in order to have windows and things like that. So you might still get a little bit of air and light between them, even if it's not as much as you would in a case like this. But I think that might be part of why we don't see whole blocks that grossly exceed that 144, except for 145, except at like maybe right at the ground level or just a couple levels above.
And Shannon, now I'm just looking back at that, not that you have to change to it if you don't want, but that next page, even further than we looked at for the appendices, it shows that if you really want that much square footage, break it into 2 towers. Go one more.
Yeah, there you go.
So somebody was asking about what's the spacing, and I know it's more expensive for stairs and elevators, but you're getting that, like you were saying, that light and air coming through buildings.
So I mentioned earlier that this is a conditional zoning. So I think, you know, how we interpret and apply this standard is really a question for staff and for the zoning administrator. But as a conditional zoning, I think one of the things we look at is, has the applicant's design mitigated any concerns that come from having a standard like that? So I think some of the comments you've made is, you know, that while the overall mass is maybe exceeds, or that horizontal length exceeds the 145 max, the applicant has mitigated it to some degree by having these different wall faces that kind of step back from one another. He has the different building step backs from different sides of the building. So if the committee is comfortable with that and feels like that is still a good design approach, then we can note that as this project moves forward, you know,
So I'd like to speak to that a little bit, because I don't want to go through the public comment and address Mr. Kevin Frazier's concerns. So his first one was that he said it was out of scale with the height, and I do not find that to be so. The height is similar to the O. Henry building. Several of the buildings in that area, I find it in keeping in scale with the general context of that area. So the height of the building doesn't bother me. Now that length of that height of that big block bothers me. It's a big chunk of building, and it does bother me. But I do believe it's mitigated, one, by the massing. It looks like separate buildings. And so again, if this was different owners doing this project, it would look somewhat similar if it was zero lot line. I'd also like to point out that those standards are generally addressing an urban context where we're creating canyons, where we've got pedestrians next to it, where they've got this big mass of the building pulled in as far on the side as they can, and it's directly adjacent to NCDOT right of way. And so I think it's mitigated by the placement on the site, the immediate context with the access to 240. And I can see where there would be conditions under which the city would allow this. I would like to agree with Mr. Frazier's recommendations that this project should be bringing some kind of civic contributions, specifically in the realm of art, and certain things like that, especially on that on Central Avenue, along that base. So there's some issues like that I'd like to note, but that would be my 2 cents on the exceeding the 145-foot rule.
Can we look at the rendering again? And Jeremy has raised a hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what Brian just said. I kind of want to look one more time, or be read back one more time, the verbiage of the UDO, if it does say wall, because there is a difference between wall and building. And if it does, when you look at it, it doesn't feel like it's different. I mean, one big long building. But I'd like to look at that verbiage again. And then the other thing is just my one note of concern was Central Avenue. Because Central Avenue already, it lacks pedestrian activation as it is. It's unfortunate, because that's your entrance into North Asheville, and you know, that's the way you walk back and forth without having to deal with highways, one of the ways. And it would just be ideal if there could be some type of activation at least in that north built portion of the building where the street goes down enough where maybe you could do something, but I understand why it may be difficult to do, but that's just my 2 cents.
Stephen Lee.
Thank you. I had basically one primary concern, and it was an item that I was hoping was going to kind of get defined a little bit further and enhanced as these drawings got finalized. But if you look at the second sheet in the set, I think this may be the easiest one to look at. Sheet C202, I believe it is. 201, sheet 201. This is such an interesting project because it basically is kind of like at the edge of a cliff in terms of how the urban fabric is working here. But we've got this gigantic new building going in, and hundreds and hundreds of people will be living here and working and playing and just shopping or whatever. But when I look at the site plan, if you look at like just as an example, the bottom left corner, so that's the southwest corner, that's a really, that's going to be a very heavily used pedestrian corner. A lot of people are going to use this as their gateway to get to the development and then from the development to get into downtown. And it just, to me, it just feels like the treatment of how the public is going to engage in this building is almost like, if this was just, a parking lot and not something that hundreds of people are going to be going in and using and living in and going to the grocery store in. The way that you would actually access a large part of this building is unclear on foot. From that corner, there's a ramp that's required there, the handicap accessible ramp, that just looks very engineered to me personally and doesn't have any character or design. And like that spot right there on that corner is the perfect space. It's part of the public realm right there. And that's why I'm kind of bringing this up. We've got this gigantic building that I think is really quite beautiful with the way that it's being broken up. But it just flops right there, to put it bluntly, at that corner. And it would be great if the developer, I think that's probably developer driven, but if the developer could see it to really do something pretty spectacular right there. That's my comment. Thanks.
Stephen Lee, would you also address how you access the elevated area on the corner of Woodfin and Central? Have you looked at that one as well?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure how you would access it, but I do know that this is something that the design team came up with in one of their half a dozen reviews they've done with us now, which is fantastic. And I think it did come a long way with the stepped planters, but I think it could go a lot further, hopefully, as the developer moves this forward. But I don't see how you would access that. I don't think it's meant to be accessed, and it may be kind of a security issue for residents and guests there. But I don't know. It's just, I guess the big thing is this is such a big building, and to me the streetscape should be treated like a big building, and like there should be granite curb on this. There should be a grand pedestrian entry that leads you from the intersection to the building that is just really spectacular. And I just don't see any of that here. Literally, it's like a parking lot. We're surrounding a parking lot. But that may change as this goes in, so maybe that will happen.
Stephen Lee, this is Warren. Just a reminder, we do have that other access into the garage parking deck. So all access is not in and out of the surface lot entrance. I don't know if that helps with any of that dialogue.
Well,
but certainly certainly take your comments.
I did look at that. You know, the main it's labeled main lobby entrance. And on the site plan, it's like a, you know, just this straight concrete sidewalk going in there that there's just nothing going on. And
so, Stephen, though, you're talking about the corner that is kind of out of the view here. So this rendering focuses on the building, but it would be to the left.
So I think what I was just talking about, there seem to be two primary resident or guest entry points. One is on south elevation, number 3 there, to the left of the vehicular entrance. It's kind of in the middle of that photo there. And just comparing it to the site plan, the rendering, you know, I think it's just lacking detail on the site plan. But the rendering is showing more than, right there on that 201.
And as far as like often goes, I mean, it is significant work getting done.
Yeah, I think the site plan probably errs on being a little more technical and highlighting that drive entry in. And I appreciate your comment, Stephen Lee. So we'll kind of help as this moves forward, give some more clarification on that. One of the things that we did do was reduce the width of that vehicular passageway there to make it a little more pedestrian friendly. It was wider, so this plan does reduce that down. But I agree we should highlight and help the plans read for as this moves forward, how that pedestrian entry goes into where the little earth fair will be. And I see that as a very activated space in that area, and we need to clarify that with information moving forward.
Staff had raised the question as part of technical review, why we even need this, because you do have access from Central Avenue into the parking area. And I believe, Chris, Warren, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was desired primarily for the hotel drop off, so people can kind of have sort of nice fluid circulation.
It was the drop off as well as through conversations with fire, the fire access around the building.
Jeremy, do you have another question?
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
It's okay. Kim, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Stephen Lee said. Central Ave, I just think there's so much room for activation on that side. It just drops off. I live not far from there, and the potential for activated traffic, whether it be by wheelchair or foot or whatever, is just missed based on the actual location of this parcel. So if there's something that you could do about it, that would be great. And I think it would change how people engage with that side of the building, which I think would be a benefit for the community, which speaks to one of the matters of public comment.
How tall is that darker brick part on the right side on number 4 that we're looking at? How tall does that get?
I did look at that. Let's see, I think I noted it in my staff report. Let's see, 12 feet tall, I believe, approximately. I think both here and here.
And what is inside that addition at that point? Anything? Is that just?
So behind this wall is the existing hotel, the sort of that blank hotel wall face. So I'd have to look at the elevation. I think that's just, I don't know if it's foundation or.
Peter has raised his hand.
Yeah.
Yes. What we're doing there is we're adding an addition to the end of the building that's the width of a hotel room on either side of the corridor. And the portion that's down at the lower level is part of the exit way. So we're having 4 levels of hotel rooms, a total of 8 additional rooms that are 4 on each side of the corridor, as a way to mitigate the issue with the blank wall. Now, one of the problems with activating the street on Central Avenue is there's relatively little room to do it, and it slopes so much. It's not even, the existing sidewalk's not handicap accessible. So any type of activity that either retail space or something that's along that street is going to be dealing with some level of, see how it starts to ramp up. I mean, it's relatively non-compliant once you get past the existing building going up to the corner. Now, where that short wall is, we're extending out the width of a hotel room on both sides of that exit corridor that you see in the middle to try to activate the facade of that building. Now, we can't really do it that readily at the street level because it's just not, we're only talking about going up 12 feet, which is not really enough room to make a retail space or an active space that would be economically viable at all.
Is it a corridor? Is it a corridor at the street there?
No, that's the corridor where the exit door is, and then
Yeah, but the brick portion that we can see that's in the addition part, you said it was part of the exit way?
Yeah, that's part of the exit way. We didn't want to have a room right down at the sidewalk just from a security standpoint, and part of that is mechanical equipment and exit way that needs to be within that lower portion. And then above it, there are 8 hotel rooms, 4 on each side of that corridor. So there's 4 on the north side, 4 on the south side, and each room has 2 windows in it.
It's also good to note that there is a stairwell, an existing stairwell, just on the other side of this. That's what you really see on the existing facade on the right side. And also all of their existing laundry facilities for the hotel are just to the right of that stairwell on the lowest level.
So if I could put on my Stephen Lee hat for just a minute, as you look at this image, some of what people are talking about is the mass, but a lot of it too is just, you've got an immense amount of sidewalk with nothing else going on. It just doesn't look very planned. And so an activated space is not necessarily just in the building, but it's in what you're doing in the landscaping in that area. And that's about as much as a landscape architect as I can do.
I agree with that. I think the activation, if it's impossible to do it in the building, something needs to be done on the site.
You're good.
No,
Peter.
The width of the sidewalk is dictated by the ordinance. If we could narrow the sidewalk down a little bit, there would be more opportunity for some type of streetscaping there that might help activate that wall.
I don't think, I mean, I don't know that we want to give up the 10-foot wide sidewalks. I think that's pretty important too. This is a primary pedestrian connection, as was noted earlier. It is one of the only ways to connect North Asheville into downtown, like either going under or over the interstate.
Is the rendering there? You see the detail 4, the blue car there. Is the rendering there correct in terms of concrete sidewalk going all the way to the base of the new building facade, the new hotel facade? Because in the site plan, it looks different. Like that right there is CO2.
Yeah, the site plan doesn't, the civil plan doesn't show the addition because these were submitted earlier.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
Stephen Lee, what we have, obviously there's not that much space in there. So what we're struggling with is, do we do something architectural to the end of the building as it exists. It's not just something that's a decal that's pasted on the building, actually have space and give up an opportunity at the street level? Or do we paste something on the end of the building and activate something at the street level? But there's not enough room to really do a good job doing both.
Is there, could the building lose 12 inches right there? I mean, just like a 12-inch wide strip of dirt could get you a green screen up on the wall.
Yeah,
there.
we could definitely do that. I think we can do that.
I think in the rendering that's on, and again, this is, I don't think update, but on A204 rendering number 1, I think it does kind of share a concept of either plantings on the wall or green screen or something. And this is, again, on sheet A204 detail 1. And that's not the latest building. And I know that's a little frustrating, Peter, because the building's evolved and it's come a long way right there too. I think that's a good reminder. We didn't always have the end finished out. So it looks better now than it did a couple of sessions ago, but a real simple green screen with an evergreen vine that could grow up easily 25 feet could make a big difference there. And I think also really, really pushing the limits of what that planting system is doing. If you go to elevation 4 on sheet A203, really pushing the limits on what happens between the hotel and I guess those are apartments, but it looks like a terraced garden right there. Push those limits with something really spectacular there, like something that like is a backdrop to people making photographs, just great landscape art, water.
It's going to be the Instagram site.
The Instagram site. What I keep going back to in the back of my mind is the fact that, and I guess this is correct, that the largest building in Asheville, I think Kevin's public comment was pretty eye-opening, and I appreciate that comment. The comments very well. But look at the streetscape that surrounds the Grove Arcade and how that's activated in just so many ways. This is larger than the Grove Arcade, probably, I don't know, maybe about 50%, but I know we need to move on. So I think my comments have been heard. I'll be quiet.
Brian.
I put my hand down. He did exactly what I wanted him to do, which was focusing on how to activate that area by really focusing on that piece between the two buildings.
And if I may just add too, Stephen Lee made me think of the Grove Arcade. When I first moved to Asheville, the Grove Arcade was cinder blocked up, and that was a complete dead zone. Dead. And so activation is so important, really, to make it vibrant and successful. So, my 2 cents.
Chris?
Yes, thank you. One clarifying thing. And Shannon, this is kind of a question for you. We actually are showing a 12-foot sidewalk on this project along Central. And I think since we submitted this, maybe when the new rules came back out, I think we've gone back to 10-foot sidewalks in the Central Business District.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
So maybe we could, instead of losing a foot of the building, we actually lose 2 feet of the sidewalk to go back to a 10-foot sidewalk here. And then we've got a 2-foot planting strip along that section of the wall to kind of take Stephen Lee's idea and expand on it.
Anybody else? Brian?
Well, I want to start to move us towards some kind of resolution. So far, we've noted that there are at least 4 conditions that exceeds the blank wall over 4 feet, a little bit over 20 feet high. I think this one's 24. Blank faces at the wall level on Central, the maximum horizontal width, and then the street activation here on Central. Those are the things that we've discussed. And I am willing to make a motion that we approve this project with those items noted for, oh, and I also wanted to include Stephen Lee Johnson's encouragement to reinvestigate and redesign the corner at Woodfin and the expressway on-ramp, and how pedestrians access the various entrances to the building to really celebrate and activate the way this building integrates with the urban landscape. Did I do that right, Stephen Lee?
Yeah, thank you for doing a concise summary on that. I'd like to second that, please.
Brian, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the conditions?
So,
I didn't. You have to get me ready by saying.
Okay. Yes,
I'm prepared to
I would like
a
to make.
motion.
I would like to make a motion that we approve this project with the following conditions. One, that the applicant review the interface of the design of the building with the urban landscape, specifically at the corner of the 240 Expressway and Woodfin, and the pedestrian entrances of the building at the various points around the building, as well as landscaping and or public art activation along Central Avenue with additional landscaping as possible. Two, that we are noting that the applicants exceeds the maximum horizontal width, but they have provided that by breaking up the building massing and orienting that massing away from the urban fabric and up against the NCDOT right-of-way, and that the applicant also work with council to provide additional civic contributions respective to the size of this project and the impact of this project on downtown. If there's any other conditions, please add those as an amendment.
And Jeremy seconded that. Is there any more public comment on this?
Stephen Lee seconded it.
Stephen Lee, I'm sorry. I think your square moved.
Before we vote, let's see if there's any public comment. Is there anybody here?
There is no one currently in the queue.
Okay, and we had the public comment by Kevin Frazier that we talked about. I think we mentioned all those points. We didn't did we discuss the Woodfin, the shrinking of Woodfin?
I know we've discussed it in other meetings. I don't have an issue with what they're doing there myself. That's all I can speak for.
Yeah, me either.
And I'll just note too that I think that whether that can be achieved or not is still pending approval by the NCDOT because of the access onto the on-ramp. And I don't know if Chris or Warren have any updates about the traffic impact study and those outcomes.
Hey, this is Chris. I'd have to double check my emails here. I apologize, but I'm relatively confident. I know that the traffic study incorporated that. The DOT came back and asked us to put signage there to make sure that we maintained a clear intersection to access the on-ramp. At that point, they were okay with the study as is.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's no public comment, I'm going to do a roll call vote on the motions we have on the table. Jeremy Goldstein?
Aye.
Kimberly Hunter?
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson?
Aye.
Brian Moffitt?
Aye.
And Robin Rains, me, aye. So that project moves forward, approved with the conditions we noted. And next on the agenda, we have Informal design review. We have 2 items for informal design review. How much more time do we have, Sasha and Shannon?
Well, that's kind of up to you all. The next items are informal, so if a commissioner had to sign off, we wouldn't have issues with a quorum, so we'd be okay. But obviously, the more input and feedback an applicant can get, the better off they are. So if you all are willing to hang in there a little bit longer, let's see if we can maybe at least get through the first item. Would be my recommendation.
Everybody feel good about that?
I've got a few more minutes. I've got work. I've got to get to work.
Yeah, and I need to sign up shortly as well.
Okay, maybe we can shoot for 2 o'clock, 15 more minutes. Okay, the informal design review, the first project is on 51 Biltmore. It's the A-Loft expansion. It's a level 2. It's a new 7-story condominium hotel addition with 105 rooms next to the existing A-Loft hotel located on the corner of Biltmore Avenue and Aston Street. Or a loft hotel. I never know how to say that.
I'll just kind of jump in with a very, very brief introduction, and I'll just turn it over to the project architect who's in the meeting here with us today. So most folks here are probably familiar with the A-Loft Hotel, which is a part of a mixed-use project located at 51 Biltmore Avenue. You can see from this rendering in the corner, this is the A-Loft Hotel. And if you were there today, you would notice that there is this sort of empty space at the southern end where there's just sort of this empty platform. That was always contemplated to be the location of a future building. So that is the proposal that's coming, is filling out that site and adding that future building. This project was reviewed originally as a conditional zoning a number of years ago. So this additional building is already contemplated in that conditional zoning approval. So we feel that it is not necessary to amend the conditional zoning, that this is simply completing what was originally reviewed and granted permission for. So the applicant has provided a site plan or a portion of a site plan kind of showing the approximate location. So this is the A-Loft Hotel, the Blackbird restaurant, the common entrance that goes to the restaurant, and Diamond Brand retailers to the south. And then south of Diamond Brand would be this new building addition. And kind of like the previous project, it is a building addition. So it would be integrated into the A-Loft Hotel. It's a separate condominium, but it's essentially an expansion of the existing building. It is proposed to be a separate hotel flag, but owned and operated by the same hotel group that currently operates the A-Loft Hotel. And I'm going to stop there and kind of turn it over to Mr. Lindsay to fill in more information or ask any questions. Buck, please just advise me. Tell me if you want me to scroll through the images. I'm happy to do that for you.
I will. Thank you, Shannon. Board members, I'm glad to be with you today and looking forward to your input. This is a project that was contemplated during the original construction of the A-Loft Hotel, which actually includes 3 individual projects all existing under a condominium ownership document. That would be the A-Loft Hotel. It would be public parking that's owned by the city of Asheville. And it would be a liner building that's built facing Lexington Street on the back. The liner building apartments were built subsequent to the original construction, but they were envisioned. The 4th component that was envisioned would be this hotel addition, which is part of the same hotel. We call it a dual branded hotel. They're both Marriott franchised hotels. The A-Loft and the Moxie are both franchised by Marriott to this owner developer, McKibben Hotel Group. We envisioned, I was the architect for the A-Loft Hotel and the public parking garage. At that time, we did provide for the structure that would be supporting this proposed new construction. Facing out onto Biltmore, there's a concrete podium. It looks kind of like a small concrete slab about 50 feet wide by 30 feet deep. But then when you go back 30 feet, you rise up 3 or 4 stories, as you see in this picture, to get to the parking garage that's beyond. So the proposed building is actually going to be a saddle of sort that comes up from Biltmore and goes up and over the garage to the rear. So it's a rather complicated concept, both from a physical construction point of view and from a building code application point of view. We have vetted this with the fire marshal and the building official. We conceived it that way originally, but I recently went back to those 2 individuals and just confirmed that we still have a good, valid building code application for this project. So Shannon, if you could go to drawing 6 in the series.
Just tell me when to stop.
You're going the wrong direction now.
Wrong direction, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, drawing 6.
Sorry, my computer's unhappy with all my scrolling.
I went too far again.
Sorry, it's my computer's driving itself right now.
Here we
I
are.
think
We're getting close.
Sorry, it's catching up to all my movements, so I apologize.
Drawing 6. There we are. Okay, this would be the street level plan that is out on the street frontage. This is going to be a cafe open to the public. Moxie has a very unique methodology of activating their guest arrival. The guest actually walks up to the bar or passes by the bar and gets directly on the elevators by using their phone identification to get into their room. So this is going to be completely an activated bar slash cafe that just happens to be the path through which guests to the hotel come in. They would go up through this pair of elevators, or if they arrived in the parking garage, they would come back through this back entrance, down a set of stairs or a chairlift elevator to the main floor, and then back up the elevators to the upper levels. Can we go up 1 level, Shannon? So we have this level here, which we're calling level 2. It feels kind of like a mezzanine, but it's actually bigger than a mezzanine. So it's a 2nd floor with an open space that's permitted by code. This would be extra seating area for meetings, coffee, lounges, guests to kill time in. Go up 1 more level. This is our 3rd floor, which would be a fitness room and a way in which guests could come from the elevators to go into the Aloft Hotel, where there are meeting rooms and a small restaurant on an upper level floor. But the 2 hotels do interconnect at this level and work as one. Up 1 more level, please. This is the typical floor plan that would tie in with the floors of the Aloft Hotel. All guest rooms with a small elevator lobby here. The stairs on the back are existing stairs that will rise up through the new construction. These are existing stairs in the Aloft Hotel, which we will take advantage of and use as part of our exiting system. And then the next level up, Shannon. And this is our top level, which would include some guest rooms facing out onto Biltmore, but more importantly, the main public area of the hotel, which would include a large dining area and an open terrace, all of which face out toward the pool to the north or to the mountains further out to the west. This is the apartment footprint that's much lower than the hotel rooms. So some of the hotel rooms look out over the apartment roof. Now, 1 more floor up, 1 more drawing, please. Now we'll look at some of the views of the building. We are borrowing on what you might call industrial age image of architecture on this front that would be composed of steel beams and columns bolted together in kind of the old-fashioned way. And all of the window systems would be infill windows. We have a glass canopy along the street frontage for protection of guests coming and going from the front area. There is a small bus stop covered area dead center in the front of our property, and we do want to move it to either this site where it's shown right now or further to the north on the other side of the garage entrance. We're talking right now with the traffic department to make sure we are able to do that, but where it sits right now is very unfortunate with respect to how the building sits. Then we do have our step back that matches up with the step back of the Aloft Hotel. And then above that, we have guest rooms. Along the side, which is a alley, we have guest rooms facing out toward the alley. And on the very top are the beginning points of our roof terrace and restaurant. Next image down, Shannon, please. Okay, this is a view from the alley. We do have a large blank wall here, which we're planning to put a mural on. This mural is a placeholder, but we want to do something that will be meaningful and attractive as part of this development. We actually have recovered one of the images of the hotel that existed on this site in the 1800s. And we're trying to figure out a way possibly to incorporate that image into this mural. This shows the back part of the restaurant on the top level and the terrace. Continuing around. Now we're looking at the end of the building facing Lexington with the liner apartment buildings on the lower section and the hotel addition on the backside. One more down. This is the view facing out toward the existing swimming pool of the Aloft Hotel. And again, we see the terrace up at the very top, guest rooms facing out. One more down. This is a view of the roof terrace, which we envision having a roof bar that would open both out to the terrace area and into the restaurant. Covered area for sun shading. One more. This is a closer up view of the front face of the building. This would be, you see the first floor is clearly defined, the second floor separated by the horizontal steel beams, third floor where there's fitness, and then on above that we see the rooms of the hotel. And there is one more, I believe. Yeah, looking at it from the opposite direction, this garage entrance is an in only, so the car's unfortunately going the wrong way. But we also propose to have a large mural on this wall inside the arrival area to direct Moxie guests and Aloft guests into their arrival points for the hotel. So that's a quick snapshot of what we're proposing to do. We have run this project through the Marriott review system, and they like what we're doing. They're totally on board for this dual branding concept, which is gaining a lot of popularity around the country right now. We've actually done probably 8 or 10 dual branded hotels around the Southeast. And that's it. Thank you.
Jeremy?
I love the sort of industrial steel glass look. I think it looks great.
Stephen Lee.
My only comment in regards to the site, the original Loft Hotel development, the sidewalk in front has a very unique streetscape treatment that is really unique to downtown Asheville in terms of the design. I would encourage you to try to expand on that and pull that in front of the new building expansion in terms of materials, and just trying to make a little bit more sense what exists there now. But that's my only comment.
Yeah, we may have to explore that a little further, because city staff have not, like, that standard that's in front of the Aloft Hotel is staff have regretted allowing because it's slick. It's not the best from a pedestrian standpoint. I don't think we'd want to replicate that again, but maybe there's a way to pull some aspect of it into the
well, and that's it. And I appreciate you
patterning.
mentioning that. It what would be nice if they just rip that up and redo the whole thing.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Just to put it a little bit more bluntly, because it does stand out, and I don't think it's as successful as it could be. But thanks for clarifying that, Shannon. So I guess what this demonstrates is that the streetscape really needs to be carefully considered right there. Thanks.
Kim?
Yeah, I need to jump off, but I just want to say I really appreciate the modernity that not only highlights the aloft, but the historic buildings that are across the street. And I just love it. I'm sure there's some technical things that I'll need to look at a little bit more closely, but aesthetically, it's been interesting to look at that pad there for years and to see that this is the design intent is really rad. And I love it.
Brian, did you have another comment?
One, you need to just volunteer to redesign a bus stop that it actually matches your building. Two, what is the material, the white material? Is that going to be ethos to match the aloft?
It would be, and we proposed two colors. One would be white in the principal areas, and then a warm gray, a light warm gray in some of the areas that will help define floor levels.
Does anybody else have anything? Jeremy and Kim have left. We're dropping like flies here. I think I like what you're doing. Also, I mean, I think that it blends well with the aloft building. I like the big glass front. I'm excited about a mural. I do hope you find a great way to use that old 1800s hotel image. That would be very cool.
I'm not real fond of the ethos, but I like pretty much everything else about it.
Does anybody else have anything to say today?
Shannon, can you scroll up to a bigger of the front part? I think staff was discussing this the other day, and just to make a note, yeah, that's perfect. Maybe it's a question for the committee. Maybe not. I was just trying to make sure we were looking at these horizontal lines and how they match up or don't match up with the aloft. And
I think it does. I mean, I think the second floor matches up with, like, this beam, I think matches up with the second floor of a loft. And then this also matches up with this is the part that I can't quite read this. Like, if the aloft balcony is lower than this balcony, that would be the only thing that I felt like didn't quite match. But I think the rest of it does a nice job of kind of hitting the floor plates with a little pop at the top, which I thought was kind of nice. But I think this is the step back.
That's correct.
Described, yeah. Buck, am I correct that this balcony doesn't match the level of the aloft balcony?
That's correct. The aloft balcony is actually the second floor.
Right, the second floor. There it is. Yeah. So,
and those are all both within the step back allowances that we have to meet.
Okay.
I think since that's a glass railing right now, that it works well because it would be transparent. Jake raised a hand.
Yeah, actually, I apologize. I'm on another computer right now. This is Eric Rowan from McKibben. I just wanted to share that some of the levels not matching up has to do with the existing structure behind it. So that's part of the reason why it's not all lining up. But we're trying to work with it to kind of create that continuity between the different components.
Thanks for addressing that.
Does anybody else have anything? Eric, did you raise your hand again? No, you didn't.
I didn't mean to, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
I'll ask this question since this is an informal review, and I think we've received fairly positive comments with a few good suggestions. Shannon, will we be eligible to come back to the next meeting for our final review?
You know, you would have to submit for technical review first. So we would take you through technical review next. And then we could go to formal design review after that.
Okay.
And then after that, depending on the timing too, you also have review in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a level 2, it's ministerial review, but it does have to, because it's downtown, it does have to go to our Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, very good input. Thank you for extending your meeting time a little bit, and it's been very useful for us.
You're welcome. I'm assuming we're going to push Collier to the, yeah, Brian needs to go too. So yeah, I'm assuming we are pushing the Collier Avenue project to the next meeting. So if nobody else has any comments, I would say that we should adjourn. Do we have to, we don't vote on that, right? We just adjourn.
I would.
You would
I mean,
vote
you
on
probably
that?
could. You could just probably
Okay.
do, you know, all in favor, aye. Any opposed,
Okay.
no.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
The 3
Aye.
that are remaining.
I would think to anybody who's listening, Robin, Stephen Lee, and Brian, if you all have comments to send, and I'll tell this to the whole committee, if you have email comments you'd like to send to Peter and his team for 44 Collier before the next meeting, that'd be great.
I can do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Peter,
everybody.
I'm sorry you keep getting bumped. It's because you do so many, we have many items on our agendas. So. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.